celebrate these voices along with our Chancellor, Brian Rogers.
Well, thanks, Bella. It's great to see a big crowd here this year. I want to welcome everyone to this author's reception, the 22nd year that we have honored our local authors and editors. And it's really neat to look at the breadth and depth of the books that we have, the creativity in this year's honorees. 19 authors, editors representing 17 works. I was just counting, I've read 6 of them so far and have a couple more sitting on my desk. You know, the books come from a variety of disciplines. For some, it's about the book stems from the discipline of the author. Others, it has something to do with personal interest areas, hobbies, but it really, when you look at it as a totality, really says something about the community that UAF is and the diversity of the UAF community. We've got poetry and fiction, we've got dog teams and icebreakers, we've got energy, physics, climate, we've got geology, birds, memoirs, quite a variety of different books here today. And I think, you know, what we see here in these books is only scratches the surface of the creativity of UAF faculty, staff, students, and alumni. In fact, Bella and I have been talking about how can we recognize all of the other creative activity of the journal articles, the presentations, etc., by all of our faculty and staff. It's really, when looked at in total, a remarkable annual achievement, and over time, a real substance. I'm always happy that we're doing it within the walls of the Rasmuson Library. I knew Elmer Rasmuson, worked with him on the expansion of this library 30 years ago, have worked with his children, and really appreciate the meaning that and the dedication that family had both to this institution and to what is the heart of a university. They had a lot to do with the structuring of this place, the programs, and the funding, and, you know, remarkable philanthropy of the Rasmuson family. For the first time this year, we've added something to the program, and that is to inaugurate one of our UAF alumni authors. And so I really can't think of a more deserving alumna than this year's honoree, Mary Albanese, 1980 geology alumna, who joins us today to be recognized for the release of her memoir. I'm sure I met Mary some years ago, but we had the most recent visit. Her most recent visit to Fairbanks was when her husband Tom came to give the keynote address at the 2010 commencement ceremony. Both Mary and her husband are alums, and, you know, families of alums accomplish great things. And while we're honoring her today, I also want to just note there'll be an opportunity to hear her share the story of her time in Alaska. She'll sign copies of the memoir Monday from 4 to 5 on the second floor here in the library. I've had the opportunity to read the book already. Sherry and I found that some interesting coincidences in Mary and Tom's life and ours. Learned a lot about Mary, but also about UAF, about interior Alaska and Alaska as a whole. I want to thank all of the authors who are here today for coming. I really appreciate that you've joined us, that you give us the chance to bask in some of your glory. It's a big deal to make it all the way to publication. It's not just the creative activity, but then all the busy work of making sure that the printer got it right, that the photos are in the right place with the right captions if there are photos, etc. And so there's a lot of work beyond the pure creative activity. So let me go first to recognize the first of the authors, and that's to our inaugural alumna honoree author, Mary Albanese. Mary wrote the book Midnight Sun, Arctic Moon, Mapping the Wild Heart of Alaska. And I'll read the abstract from that. A young upstate New York woman begins an adventure of a lifetime as she moves away from her safe and conventional path. She's unable to resist the excitement and challenge of a chance to become a geological explorer in Alaska, where she maps remote wilderness areas and journeys to the depths of her own heart. A memoir that's full of rich and eccentric characters with human failings. This landscape reveals the courage and sacrifice of the author's family of visionary explorers who mapped the wild state. Surviving dangers most people will never face, the author persists in the face of hardships and loss. Given her motto, if at first you don't succeed, try something harder. It's not surprising that Albanese's journey from a farm in upstate to New York to a new life in Alaska, spurred by a gut feeling and news of a teacher shortage there, was filled with great success, disappointing failures, and heartrending losses. Spiked with wry humor, Albanese's candid narrative is most effective when she pivots between accounts of surmounting handicaps, things like unfamiliarity with the extreme climate, and being a woman in a male-dominated field, to horrifying tales of colleagues disappearing in the wilds, being mauled by bears, and falling off mountains. She ends on a bittersweet note, reflecting on her reasons for leaving Alaska, a place that once held seemingly endless opportunities for her. So Mary, congratulations. Let me present you with one of this year's tokens. Come on up, yep.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the publication.
Thank you, Brian. Now, as we'll start alphabetically with our authors, and so our first presenter will be Rose Burns. Yep, I'll hand it to you. I'll hand it. Topic and Discourse Structure in West Greenlandic Agreement Constructions was written by Anna Berge of the Alaska Native Language Center and the Linguistics Program. In it, she examines how the speaker's role affects syntactic structures within discourse. The study won the Mary R. Haas Award, presented annually by the Study for the Society of the Indigenous Languages of the Americas, the highest award given in the study of Native languages. So, Dr. Berge? Here. As we read your book, if you'll come up, that would be great. I'll present you with a token. She's back there.
Sorry.
No, it's not a problem. Hey, we're flexible here. Okay, so next will be, oh, I'm sorry, Susan Hahn. Susan?
It's my pleasure to present this book, Sea Life of the Aleutians, an Underwater Exploration, written by Reed Brewer, Eloise Chenoweth, Sean Harper, and Stephen Jewett. This book, well, first of all, did you know that the sunflower star is one of the largest sea stars in the world, and despite having more than 15,002 feet, can travel an amazing 30 inches per minute? All detailed in here. This book takes the reader on an underwater journey in the nearshore waters of Alaska's Aleutian Islands. Over 115 color photographs present the astoundingly diverse and beautiful undersea world of the Aleutians, recorded by research divers from 2004 to 2007. The authors provide natural history information and an overview of the geography, geology, and oceanography of the 1,200-mile archipelago. In addition to sharing the experience of the divers as they encountered the beauty of the underwater Aleutian ecosystems, the exquisite photographs in this book are a powerful means of educating others about science and the need to preserve nature's splendors. Whiting, David Griffith, Stephen Jewett, Lisa Clow, Will Ambrose, and Jeffrey Johnson, combining Inupiaq and scientific knowledge, ecology in northern Kotzebue Sound, Alaska. This is based on a 3-year research project developed by non-local researchers and the native village of Kotzebue. Brings together traditional ecological knowledge and scientific ecological knowledge to present a comprehensive understanding of species and environmental processes in Kotzebue Sound in northwestern Alaska. Unique contributions month by month, seasonal accounts, and the incorporation of Inupiaq knowledge and descriptions of more than 65 illustrated marine species. The book draws heavily on interviews with Inupiaq hunters and fishers and uses quotes liberally showing how the Inupiaq think about and talk about their marine mammals and fish, and how they relate species, abundance, quality, and health to ice and storm patterns and other changes in your physical environment. Thank you.
All right, Catherine Williams is next. She'll present about milk. Yes. No, you don't have to grab the book. You have to use the podium.
But this one melt. I'm nervous. My hands are. I don't want to touch it. The title "Melt" sparked this cat's curiosity, especially this time of year. I felt Derek Burleson's poem "Melt" explored the erotic seasons of lovers, life, and the land. His "The day commas fell out" writing style made me think of two lovers rambling on with their thoughts and their feelings. My husband travels a lot in his job, and I'm always asked how I feel when he leaves and I don't hear from him for days at a time. Parts of this poem says it best. The thought of even losing you fills my mind, with winter, with nights at 40 below, with ice fog, hoarfrost, and steel shattering. The thought of losing you is black spruce charred by moonlight, dogs howling their chains, nothing fusing nothing into an icy thought you meant to write down once, but then forgot. So that's part of Melt.
Wow. Derek here.
Thank you.
And Christy.
The book that I'm presenting is Principles of Terrestrial Ecosystem Ecology, written by Terry Chapin, who's Distinguished Professor Emeritus in Biology and Wildlife in the Institute of Arctic Biology here at UAF, and his co-authors Pamela Matson and Peter Vatusik, who are both at Stanford. This book was published by Springer. As you can see, it's a weighty tome. It's the second edition of a book that was originally published in 2002. The first edition did really well. It's in the libraries of more than 500 academic institutions, and it's been a very hot item at our library. And I think we can expect that the second edition will be equally well used. To quote from the preface, the book was written to provide a conceptual basis for understanding terrestrial ecosystem science for an audience of both students and practicing scientists. Features that librarians look for, it includes a glossary, a lengthy list of references, more than 1,200, and an extensive index. And I think it's going to do just as well as the first one did. Thanks, Terry.
Our next author has two books, so we'll have two presenters come up. That'll be Leslie McCartney first, please, followed by Holtzman.
I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Ross Cohen's wonderful book, Breaking Ice for to Oil, the Epic Voyage of the SS Manhattan through the Northwest Passage. Humboldt Oil wanted to ascertain if it was more economically feasible to transport crude oil from Prudhoe Bay by sea to the refineries as opposed to the then proposed Trans-Alaska pipeline. And Humboldt proved it could be done. But in the the end, the transportation of the crude oil via the pipeline proved more economically viable, and the planned sea operation was abandoned 1969-1970. That was then. History not only informs us of our past, but it also helps shape our future. The SS Manhattan proved it was technically and operationally feasible to operate an ice-breaking tanker year-round in the Arctic, and it was possible to transverse the Northwest Passage. Today, with the annual shrinkage of ice due to global warming and the shipping lanes in the Northwest Passage opening, these variables that Ross talks about in his book that allowed for this are going to be on the table again. We'll be talking about engineering challenges, socioeconomic and commercial considerations, environmental and cultural issues, and as well, what will be discussed is the political sovereignty question of who actually owns the Northwest Passage and Arctic waters. Thank you, Ross. Well done.
And I have the pleasure of introducing the Long View, Dispatches on Alaskan History by Ross Cohen. Alaska has some pretty unique history. I noticed it from the first time that I visited here. From the first person that I met, everyone here seems to know how to tell a story, and almost everyone has a unique sense of humor. Ross Cohen's book is a collection of his columns for the Esther Republic over the last 4 years. From the Equinox Marathon to Cleary Summit, this is a book that will have you nodding and recognizing almost somebody that you know in this great land. Do you think you know all about Alaskan oil or the Charles Bonnell statue? You might be surprised. Cohen presents it freshly, telling little nuggets that are more than just the facts and dates covered elsewhere. I particularly like the story about Mike Gravel, which taught me something that I didn't know about him, which was that he pioneered a lot of the political television engineering that went on in this state in 1968. So thank you, Russ. It taught me a lot.
All right, we have John Cool next.
Okay, this book is Land and Environment in the North, and there are contributors that are far too numerous to mention, and the book is edited by 4 people: Annie Duffy, Lawrence Duffy, John Kelly, and Karen Hart. Developed by a large group of UAF faculty, this is a collection of interdisciplinary scientific essays regarding sustainable living in the circumpolar North. These essays were initially developed for a land and environment course and are presented in a semi-textbook fashion with learning objectives, reading assignments, and student activity suggestions. They are edited and presented in a common holistic perspective on what is needed to live well in the far north. And some of the principal topics in the book include biocomplexity in the north, water supply, waste treatment in the Arctic, food traditions and food systems in rural Alaska, and observation, sustainability, and paths of change. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill? We have Bill Schneider next.
I'm pleased to present North by 2020, this 700-plus page volume, another massive achievement by the authors and by the University of Alaska Press for pulling this off. This volume brings together essays emanating from the 4th International Holy Year. The work bridges the social, the natural, the physical sciences, including the wisdom of those whose long-term experiences and oral traditions inform their adaptation to this place. More than a compendium of disparate essays, the editors skillfully integrate these different types of knowledge, demonstrating connections and implications, specifically as they relate to climate and environmental change. From wildfires to eroding coastlines, we're continually reminded that the analysis of the problems, the challenges of responding, and the long-term planning for the future demand a variety of different experts and disciplines and decision makers working together at multiple scales, from the local to the global. The work is a benchmark of knowledge about our changing climate and a reference for exploring the implications. Highly readable, this work could be referenced not only by academics, but also by politicians and other interested citizens, and that would be good.
All right, we have John again.
Okay, this one is for land use and land use cover changes, impact on climate and air quality for voters. Okay, as the title suggests, significant changes in surface conditions such as vegetation patterns or the extent of glacial ice have effect on local and regional atmospheric characteristics and possible global implications. The heat island effects of concentrated urban activities and the destabilizing impacts of wildfire, extended drought, and glacial retreat are prominent examples. This book presents a summary of the current knowledge regarding the impacts these kinds of changes have on atmospheric composition, weather, and climate. Interactions between major variables are often complex, with unintended consequences and implications for many economic activities, including water management strategies, construction guidelines, location of food production areas, and industrial zones. In addition, land cover changes can cause changes in regional temperature and precipitation similar to that of greenhouse gases, suggesting that they have contributed in part to recent climate changes.
Okay, we have Kat Williams. And there you are. Next year you get to read all of them. Does that excite you?
Nervous as it is. The writings, I really enjoyed all three books that I read, so it's just public speaking. I think I need to do speech class all over again. I had the pleasure to read two of John Morgan's writings, Spearfishing on the Chattanooga and Forms of Feeling. I like them both, however, I enjoyed Forms of Feeling more. I like seeing the full circle of what, who, where, and the why that caused the spark to turn into a flame for the artist to create their poetry. I don't know why, but the ending of his poem, Postcard from Nancy, really struck a chord with me. It reads, "In this age of war and purchased love, mine's a free answer." One of my favorite poems of all time of his is The 26-Year War, and if you'll indulge me. Where is the land beyond landscape? Slipping across the border, distant herds of snow, leaving the map behind with its diagrammed cities, four-square musics, and all the predictable violence. Here, clouds become ideas as black as headlines and even less discreet. I am learning a language of otters and elk, of distances and profound insecurities. Why do we kid ourselves? Where teeth rot and stars fail, even sex is a perpetual war with the dying. Here is the stone she saw as my mother. I do not deny it. Here I am open, alone, advancing into the sky. I did a little clip from a poem from each book, so now you have to read each book to figure out which one I did. Thank you.
Ann?
My second book is Seabird celebrates the work of 40 contributors from around the world: Mexico, United States, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, and France. So you can see it has a worldwide scope. Quoting from Krista's introductory chapter in the book, the goal is to evaluate what common ecological patterns and processes seabird islands share, and how these processes vary among islands as a function of climate, geologic history, and history of human interaction. And many of us might be aware that one of the consequences of human interaction has been the introduction of rats onto many seabird islands that prey on the eggs and the chicks. It has an appendix that describes the 15 major seabird island systems that the authors studied, and a map of the locations of those main systems, as well as many seabird islands from other parts of the globe. It's a lovely book. Thank you. And unfortunately, Krista couldn't be with us. She's attending a conference of young scientists in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Jeanette?
It's my pleasure to present two books by Johnny Payne II, Silver Dagger and Second Chance. A rich mystical tale from 18th century Ireland and America, Silver Dagger follows Liam Boyd from his youth through many diverse adventures as an adult. And they are quite diverse. They include fleeing from witches, there was a short stint of preaching, and I believe he was also held captive on a ship at one point. So, a very adventurous book. The somewhat dark comedy, Second Chance, introduces us to Kara just before she attempts and fails to end her own life. In both works, we are drawn into the world of these incredible characters, painted extremely intimately by what can only be described as a master storyteller. Thank you.
Hello, representing Energy Civilization, The Zenith of Man, right here. It is by Douglas Reynolds. Dr. Reynolds has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a PhD in economics, which comes in handy because right now he is the current professor of oil and energy economics here at UAF. This book describes the declining world oil supply and the subsequent rise in prices. This book is both interesting and informative, and it can help you alter your current lifestyle. It describes ways not only to best save the planet from environmental disaster, overpopulation, or food crisis, but it can also help you adapt in ways you never would have dreamed. Thank you.
Hello. My second book is Finding Mars by Ned Rosell. Finding Mars is Ned's interwoven tale of science, travel, and adventure. Permafrost researcher Kenji Yoshikawa as they travel 750 miles by snow machine across Bush, Alaska, from Emmenak up the Yukon to the mouth of the Noatak and on to the town of Kotzebue. We learn that this is not the first time Yoshikawa has gone on an extended walkabout. Kenji has pushed a wheeled cart across the Sahara, skied to the South Pole, and paddled an outrigger upstream on the Amazon, all in an attempt to challenge himself, solve puzzles, and find places that answer questions about what our planet and Mars have in common. Core samples are drilled, permafrost stations are set up, and the mystery of the Yoshikawa biscuit is explained. Thank you.
On-Time Delivery, the Dog Team Mail Carriers by William Schneider. And in this book, Bill uses archival documents and photographs and oral history recordings to tell the story of the Postal Delivery Service in interior Alaska that utilized teams of sled dogs carrying heavy loaded sleds from the turn of the 20th century to the 1940s, which is when airplane service became more reliable and took over the mail service. It is a compelling story of brave men and hardy dogs dealing with difficult weather and trail conditions to meet their goals of delivering mail to native villages, mining camps, and isolated trappers. By using oral histories from people who lived the events, this book brings history to life. We now have individual people to identify with as characters of who these dog team drivers were. We have personalities we can understand. It helps us envision something that many of us can't ever imagine. Traveling long distances in remote wild Alaska in the middle of winter by dog team. The book also sets the history of the dog team mail carriers within the larger context of the changing nature of how people experience the country where they live. It is a story of how Alaskans have used the land, how connections to place were once established because of detailed knowledge of the landscape that came from extensive travel along a vast network of trails, and how these connections and understandings disappeared after the increased reliance upon airplanes that changed our transportation system from ground to air. Bill also tells us his personal connections to the stories of these mail carriers, which was my favorite part of the book, was his own experiences on the trail, from his own dog mushing experiences. And it adds that personal layer to this historical chronicle. The book also includes many wonderful photos, maps of the trail, and timelines that are very useful for dating the stories that are discussed. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to present Fingerprints on the Moon, My Life in Physics. Not My Life in Physics, Glenn Shaw's Life in Physics. Glenn Shaw is Professor Emeritus at the Geophysical Institute in the Atmospheric Sciences Research area. He's also a frequent user of the Keith B. Mather Library and never hesitates to tell me when things are to his liking or not to his liking, and I welcome that. He's also sometimes to be heard on NPR. So this book was when he was jotting down some of his stories for his grandchildren. He was encouraged to think of going beyond just jotting down stories. The stories were so entertaining that there was book material in it, and so he set himself down to produce the book. So it's described as an irreverent scientist's journey which takes the reader from the journals of Africa to the light side of the moon. As a Howard Hughes Fellow, Glenn Shaw worked on mounting a traveling wave tube to the chassis of a Surveyor spacecraft with his own two hands before it successfully launched to the moon. His fingerprints did not really travel to the moon as gloves were worn in a strictly controlled antiseptic environment. Filled with Shaw's reminiscences, starting with college during the space race, and more than 4 decades spent at the Geophysical Institute, which took him to all 7 continents, this book is an entertaining, engaging read for everyone who loves real adventure stories. Don't worry about the physics. You do not need rocket science to appreciate the fun Glenn Shaw has living his life exploring ideas, questioning observations, and devising experiments, sometimes jerry-rigging equipment to test hypotheses. I don't see Glenn. Is Glenn in here? I don't see you. I'm quite disappointed because I wanted to go, Glenn Shaw, this is your life.
Hello again. It's my great pleasure to present The Rabbits Could Sing by Amber Flora Thomas. I see you here. The Rabbits Could Sing is a sort of first-person journey through the poet's senses. From the first page, you really feel and taste the red apple that she has in her hand. Later, you can feel the heat from the sun in her lap, and describing the place as a recent transplant from outside to Fairbanks. This really made me yearn for that kind of connection to your home. Thank you. Very welcome.
All right, we just have a few words from Joan Braddock.
I just want to thank the library for giving me just 1 second to congratulate all of the authors recognized here today. I'm very pleased that 5 of the titles this year being recognized are UA Press titles. And I would just like to remind people that UA Press is here to serve both authors and readers alike who are interested in topics related to Alaska and the circumpolar north. I put a few of our Spring 12 catalogs near the entrance as you come in. If you're interested, please take a copy. And again, congratulations to all the authors for a wonderful suite of books. Congratulations.
So if we could just have a round of applause for the presenters, I think they did a great job. Put this event on, that was great, thank you so much. And if the authors, before you leave, wouldn't mind coming up here, we'd just like to get a group picture with you, and Brian perhaps, and everyone else, please enjoy food, drinks, because you know we can't have food in the library, I'm just kidding. So take it with you, go on, thank you very much, see you next year.